Welcome to Shawn and Carter Have a Podcast. My name is Shawn.
And I'm Carter.
And we have a very space, science fiction-y themed episode for you this week.
Space!
It's a podcast in space.
Wouldn't that be cool? I bet has there been a podcast on In Space ever, I wonder?
There's gotta be, right?
Podcast from the ISS?
There's gotta be. I mean, I've shown videos that were shot in the International Space Station on 5 Things already, and they were for such ridiculous things as Angry Birds. Like, any way they can get people interested in what they're doing up there, they'll try.
So, Steve Robinson on STS-114, we're never going to see any more STS missions since the shuttle has been decommissioned, it was the first podcaster in space.
There we go.
And I chatted Shawn the link. It's on the NASA website, and it looks pretty short. A lot shorter than a Shawn and Carter, at least.
So someone's done it. We don't need to go to space to accomplish that goal.
No, but that'd be fun. We could.
It would be cooler if someone listened to our podcast in space. How about that?
Ooh.
We'll send it up with Branson or whatever.
That's a goal. That's a goal right there. All right, I'll put that. We're gonna file that one away and see what we can do about getting Shawn and Carter into space.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, speaking of space and awesomeness, we're doing Star Wars, right? We're gonna talk about Star Wars for a couple weeks, and numerous people in the comments have indicated to us that they've never seen Star Wars.
This is an unexpected folly. This is fun. I like that some people in our audience are going to get it to experience Machete Order, and they're really going to get to experience it because they will feel all the effects of watching it in this specific order.
That's absolutely right. We are hopelessly spoiled and corrupted and tainted from all of our experience with Star Wars. So, we're going to kind of put on a show of only talking about the movies as we see them, but how can you not think a little bit about all the rest of them? I think it's really
exciting. Can't help but you can't unknow everything you know.
Can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
I can't watch these movies without constantly thinking of jokes from like Spaceballs and from like the Robot Chicken. Like I can't not think of the references now because it's just been so ingrained.
Don't get penisy.
Exactly.
If I'm allowed to say that. Yeah, so I think that's very exciting. So for the people in the comments who have said that you've not seen Star Wars before at all, or have sort of not a deep background in it, I think Shawn and I are very interested to hear what you have to say about Star Wars. So please comment on the video or tweet at us your thoughts so we can see like what it's like to be on that side of the door.
I feel like we're conducting research a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're on the frontier of this non-Star Wars viewer movement.
Yes. This is our little test. Which I'm going to call someone out. I'm going to call someone out right now, Shawn. I'm going to call it Ron. Ron is skeptical of the project entirely.
Yeah. Why is he not excited? He's like, Star Wars? Pfft, who cares? Everyone's done Star Wars.
Yeah, it's like, well, it's been done to death. It's like, yeah, but you get to see Star Wars.
Plus, right. Apparently a bunch of our audience hasn't seen Star Wars, so
yes,
there we go.
Yeah, so has Star Wars been done to death, and most of the points you could ever make about it have been made? Sure. I think that, like, in this project that Shawn and I are doing, I mentioned right before we started the show, this is our 39th podcast. That's a lot. Being a geek podcast, basically, or a nerd podcast. I don't know the difference between those words.
I don't either. I don't pretend to.
Yeah, I don't. I've got an XKCD for you on that. I can actually just describe it visually. It's a Venn diagram of geeks and nerds, and the intersection is people who care very deeply about the difference between the words geeks and nerds.
Nice. That makes sense.
Right? Being that kind of a podcast series, I think, we almost have an obligation to keep up our cred, to talk about Star Wars a little bit,
Yeah.
And why not watch it?
I thought the Machete Order was what would be the thing that made us at least stand apart a little bit.
Yeah, because we will definitely, I think that for sure now, we will have a 6th podcast where we just talk about cultural stuff and the history of Star Wars and all the tie-ins, and then probably talk about Machete Order and what we thought.
Right.
So,
that's when we'll get out all of our Star Wars toys and stage the giant Hoth battle.
oh, that'd be so cool.
We'll need a video podcast for that again.
Every Rogue Squadron game has the Hoth level,
Yep.
and I love it. I
It
don't
never
think
gets old harpooning those things.
No, and just watching them fall. Well, we can talk about it.
We're not even in the right movie.
We're not even in the right movie. They don't have speeders until the second one. One of Ron's questions was, "What's our favorite Star Wars vehicle?" And I said I didn't have one. Maybe it's those snow speeders.
You like the snow speeders?
Those are pretty cool.
They're cool, but what use are they anywhere but Hoth?
Well,
when do we see any other snow in the Star Wars universe?
Well, weren't they just like normal speeders that they made cold ready? Like,
I don't know.
I think they mentioned, it's like, well, whatever, we'll talk.
They
about
added some fiberglass to them.
I don't know. I thought they were pretty cool. Well, Ron, I hope we can
dazzle you.
Yeah, we're gonna put on the razzle dazzle, Richard Gere style. No one's gonna get that but you, Sean.
Thanks.
So, last bit of follow-up before we talk about Elaine and Ron and their podcast. The Avengers. We didn't quite get everything out. It was too soon. We hadn't had enough time to think about everything. So
yeah,
Sean had a couple things at least that you wanted to bring up.
I thought it's probably worth mentioning that we spent the car ride back from the theater to your apartment in relative silence because all of us just wanted to talk about things we'd just seen, but we couldn't because we didn't want to accidentally ruin a good point before we were on camera. And we didn't know what else to talk about, so we were just like, so where's your apartment?
Sean was counting the number of tattoo parlors on the way back to my place.
Yeah, you mentioned Richmond is just overtaken with the indie scene.
Yeah,
I think the hipster scene.
Yeah. Well, yes. So.
But anyway,
some things that we wanted to bring up.
There was one major sequence that I thought one of us would remember, and none of us did. During the fight sequence, there's a probably 30-second shot. Maybe not quite that long, but close, of all 6 Avengers, one in a row. And the camera just goes through all of them. And I thought that in a high-budget special effects movie, that's the kind of shot that someone thought really hard about. And it was pretty good. I thought it was pulled off really well.
Yeah, I think I said this this exact same thing on the last podcast, that this is basically a Michael Bay movie, if a Michael Bay movie was any good.
Mm-hmm.
And not just any good, but really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of those things that you might see in a Michael Bay movie, but it's
a camera that winds through all kinds of things, like when the camera follows the bomb down in Pearl Harbor, which is a Michael Bay movie.
Yeah. But the problem with those movies is that it's going from thing to thing to thing that I don't really care about. And it's just this angry, loud mess in the frame, and it goes from one thing to the other, and I'm supposed to care about them because it's really big and exploding or crying or yelling or whatever, and I don't really care because you didn't give me a reason to. But when we go through all the Avengers, you're like, yeah, let's do it.
Right. You've been watching these characters struggle to really pull together and get a real sense of teamwork. And when you finally get the shot that has all 6 of them, one in a row, kicking butt, it's it feels really rewarding. Look at them all go. That is awesome. That would be the one panel on one page of comics that you would see a really wide angle and all 6 of them kicking butt at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty awesome.
Really cool. Really, really cool. We didn't talk about this at all, but we probably shouldn't because we are really not comic book experts at all.
As Dave and Sam were wont to point out in the comments in the last episode.
We know.
We know that there's a lot of background that we don't understand, but as film viewers, does it matter?
Yeah, Yes, guys. We're gonna talk. I'm sure I'm gonna talk a lot about that when we get to the prequels in Star Wars, and I'm just screaming about why I don't understand anything that's going on because I had to read like a dozen books to like understand what's happening. Like this movie was, and all of these Marvel movies are self-contained, and you should be able to understand them.
Yes, exactly. You should be able to understand what is presented to you without any huge background knowledge.
Right, and that's the really cool thing is that if they do the story right and everything is sort of self-contained, they can have references that maybe I just don't quite understand and don't need to, but all the comic book people can be like, ooh, that right there, they're referencing, the gauntlet in the whatever that came from blah, 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 and has this like decades-long history, and it's just like a little gauntlet that you see in the background, and I wouldn't even notice.
Exactly.
So, and I didn't.
No, I didn't either. I saw that comment.
Right? Apparently, Dave is now quibbling with the Wikipedia on Thanos, which I think is pretty cool. Maybe he wouldn't have edited it or something.
I'm taking this point into contention.
Yeah, it's like, oh wow, I'm glad I brought that up. We can clear up Wikipedia a little bit. Yeah.
After viewing the movie, I was able to read a couple things that I had been putting off reading because I was trying to avoid spoilers. And I read some about the creation of Hulk, which was handled by ILM. And that kind of ties into our Star Wars discussion because ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, was created by George Lucas for Star Wars. And they've gone on to do amazing things. They are basically responsible for all the advancement in computer technology in the movie industry since the 1970s. And they created the Hulk, and they did full body scans of Mark Ruffalo. That's why it looks so much like Mark Ruffalo. They took his physical form and extrapolated it into the Hulk. They said the model of the Hulk has Mark's fingerprints.
Shut up.
That is how exact it is.
That's crazy attention to detail.
That's kind of, if I were the actor, I would kind of be like, can you not do that?
That's creepy.
That's a little weird.
That is an amazing attention to detail. And whatever project someone's working on, whenever you put that much care into it, you usually get a pretty good product. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Film, piece of software, art,
And I don't think anyone's debating that the Hulk really, really came off well in this movie. Everyone just freaking loves him.
Yeah, I'm thinking now, yeah, I loved him a lot. Would he have been such a standout character if the CGI had been a little more iffy?
If you would have had like a third of the audience who wasn't buying it. I mean, I saw that happen with I Am Legend. The nighttime, the vampire creatures or whatever the heck they are in that movie, a lot of people, it kind of ruined the whole movie because they were unbelievable. You get pulled out of it and you can't readjust, and it can't have an effect on you if you're not believing it.
Right, and the Edward Norton Hulk, this was probably, he looked okay in the light, but mostly they had to have him in, he was out at night or in really tight enclosed spaces, so you couldn't see all of him.
They did things to hide the effects.
Right, because it wasn't super great. And you just couldn't do that with what the Hulk did in this movie. He was supposed to be, out there doing stuff, punching Thor, for comic effect. And if he looked fake, you'd be like, yeah, whatever, I guess that's funny. You'd be like, yeah, it's Jar Jar Binks. It's not the like all the stuff that people don't like about Jar Jar Binks, but it's just sort of like, yeah, you look like a fake character. You don't look like you're really interacting with the other actors. And the Hulk did.
Mm-hmm.
So
great work.
Good job, ILM. Well, ILM, they've got some serious competition from Peter Jackson now. Weta is pretty, or as he pronounces it, Wetter.
Wetter. You need the R, the fake R.
They do some pretty ridiculous, amazing stuff too. So, and that's another one of those workshops that basically came out of a single person or a very small group of people's desire to make a particular movie, and they made this company to help them do it, and now it makes crazy, amazing things. You know? ILM is like they're a tent pole of Hollywood now when it comes to visual effects.
Yeah.
So, got a little more follow-up stuff. This is just for Elaine and Ron. So I'm going to get through this pretty quick. Podcasts that we listen to. You mentioned this in your response.
I didn't have your tally to add.
Right. So uh, obviously, as much as I can, I listen to the amazing This American Life
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, there are episodes of This American Life that have made me laugh harder than, a lot of funny movies or stand-up comedy that I've seen, and there are plenty of episodes of This American Life that have, left me in tears because the story was so moving, or, uh, you know,
I would say as many as half the episodes of This American Life are better than most TV.
it's much better than most TV.
It's astounding. It's just so engaging. And it's kind of like the way I explained it on my blog. It's just everyday people, but the way the stories are told makes all the difference.
Yeah. To continue our Joss Whedon theme, you mentioned watching the Showtime series. Actually, and I think you asked the question like why they don't make them as much. And Ira Glass has said it's just really like the production is like grueling on top of doing the actual show, and they just like it's just too hard.
Well, then I wish they had seasons that they could operate, like do different things.
Yeah. I mean, I don't.
Or
know
I
that-
wish there
that
were
they're-
two Ira Glasses, I guess.
Yes, if there was another Ira Glass, if only. Uh, so that's why they aren't doing that. If I could recommend one, you recommended one episode from early This American Life. I would recommend for our listeners if they want to try a pretty good one. Also, I'll dig it up. You can listen to them all for free streaming from the WBZ website. I guess it's This American Life. They have their own website. Is the episode one of the live episodes they did, and it's the one with Joss Whedon and Dan Savage, and
it's like return to the scene of the crime.
Return to the Scene of the Crime. It's Mike Birbiglia, Dan Savage, and Joss Whedon. There might be someone else. Oh, at the top of it was a sort of like a correspondence story about a judge that makes kids who've stolen.
That's
like,
right.
Carry a sign outside the building that says "I stole" or something, and
Right.
they have to stand out on the corner for like 8 hours straight or something. It's pretty good. I would highly recommend that. So yes, I try to listen to This American Life as much as possible. And I used to listen to a related podcast, and I've really fallen out of habit, and that's Planet Money.
Okay, yeah. I've heard them on the This American Life show a couple times. They did like stuff about the housing market collapse and stuff.
Yeah, if you want a 60-minute a 60-minute or less understanding of what exactly happened to cause the subprime crisis, and it's actually interesting, and you'll leave the podcast with like an understanding.
Yes.
Then
Perfect English terms, nothing
Yes.
that's over your head.
Yes, if you want to check out, I think this episode received an award of some kind.
I think you're right.
It's the Giant Pool of Money.
Yes, that's it.
Great episode. So they actually got their start. I forget the guys' names. Adam and Alex Bloomberg and Adam someone. They got their start just as economic and international finance correspondents for NPR, and they did a couple stories with This American Life. They were so wildly popular. Everyone loved how simply they could explain things like that are complex. They got their own NPR show, basically, Planet Money, which I believe is at like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Highly recommended.
Which is why it's impossible to keep up with.
Exactly. It's so frequently. I can't keep up with it.
Well, guess what? The economy keeps going every day.
Yes.
Unfortunately.
I, until very recently, every week listened to the History of Rome podcast, which is one of the best produced podcasts out there. It just ended, actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you mentioned it, and I didn't know much about it.
I think it's about 175, just shy of 200 episodes over the course of about 4.5 or 5 years. Started out as a hobby of this guy, Mike Duncan, and he ended up loving it. I think he does have a day job, but he chronicled the history of Rome from the early myths from the 700s BC to the very last recognized Roman emperor in the West, and he is sort of he's decided not to touch the Eastern Roman Empire and the 1,000 years that they spanned. He actually put together a number of History of Rome tours where I think they've done like 4 or 5 of them, where he took groups of people who were fans of the podcast in Rome on this whole tour of the Mediterranean in Italy and in Greece, just for fun, because he thought it was a cool idea, and he got some help, like getting the tour together and organized it, and it's pretty cool.
I'm sure it wouldn't be a problem to find people who would want to go tour the Mediterranean.
Right. It's pretty nice there.
I seem to remember someone on this podcast recently saying that they'd vacation there first chance they got.
And I seem to remember a commenter mentioning that he's from Croatia, or
I think it was Croatia.
Near there, and that the coast is beautiful. So I've been keeping up with that for years and years and years. It's a great podcast. Sad that it has ended. He has said that he's interested in potentially doing a new podcast that is basically an American history podcast through the lens of the various party systems of government. So like Federalists and Anti-Federalists and the Democratic Republicans, and the
Whigs,
the early Republicans, the Southern Democrats, looking at American history and American politics through.
Everyone outside of our country just went like, what in the world are they talking about?
Right.
I've never heard those names before.
Yes. Well, anyway, so there is one podcast that I listen to every single week and I don't miss it, and that is Hypercritical with John Siracusa and Dan Benjamin. Dan Benjamin is a professional he runs a network of podcasts called 5x5,
mm-hmm.
sort of like Kevin Smith's network.
Yeah.
5x5, it's sort of a geek network, and it focuses a lot on Apple and Mac and iOS, so obviously I'm interested in it. Hypercritical is John Siracusa. If you don't know the background on this guy, he kind of got his start on the internet writing these dozens of page-long reviews of the Mac operating system and every new OS release. He would write these for Ars Technica, and back when he was writing them, he was one of the biggest draws for Ars. Like, they were not the big powerhouse blog that they are today, and he drove a ton of traffic to them and became pretty well known in the Mac community. And actually, people thought that he was like a PC guy because he was like really, really critical of the early operating system. And he still is. This podcast is basically his forum to like take a topic and talk about it for 2 hours and just like rip it apart. It doesn't have to be Apple related, although it almost always is. So I always catch that. And then there are other things on the 5x5 network that I try to listen to.
That's where you get your healthy batch of criticism from.
Mm-hmm. I take my inspiration from John Siracusa. I'm a fairly critical person, just to begin with. But it's nice to hear someone. It's always nice to hear someone go off on a long rant about about something, especially if it's nitpicky. Really like.
As specific as possible.
Yes, detailed, and he's very, very specific and detailed. There are other shows on there. Build and Analyze, that's about iOS web development. The Talk Show with John Gruber. I've stopped really listening to The Talk Show lately. I just read John Gruber's blog. And then one of the big shows on there is, do you know Merlin Mann? Do you know of that name?
No. He's
like a productivity expert, and he has a podcast called Back to Work, which I just can't stand. He has a very unusual style, which I find distracting and irritating.
Okay.
Anyway, hard to describe. So those are the podcasts that I listen to, guys. And of course, Shawn and Carter have a podcast. I listen to that too.
I've never heard of that one.
My only other thing, well, two things. Elaine's place that she would want to travel to is Prague.
Mm-hmm.
Good choice, Elaine.
Yeah, I support that.
Mm-hmm. Prague is beautiful. I would love to go there, and that is where my people are from.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, we're from the former Czechoslovakia.
I have a friend who spent many years of his childhood in Czechoslovakia because his parents were missionaries. He got dragged along for the ride with his little brother.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, beautiful over there. And the episode of No Reservations with Anthony Bourdain, where he goes to Prague, I highly recommend that episode. It's pretty great. they finish the episode at a well, the very last thing he in that episode is he's just has like a traditional like family meal with this sort of normal family. But right before that, he goes to a much more traditional rurally pig slaughter, where you basically you got your pig and they take it apart and they use they turn it into tons of stuff. They don't leave anything to waste. And he also they just constantly drink through that episode. You can just watch Tony just get more and more drunk and just like eating sausages and like drinking beer and doing shots.
He only remembers arriving in Prague.
Yes. So it's a pretty great episode. The final thing that Ron asked about was private schools. Tips on private schools.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to mention that I heard him say it, and I will talk about it. I'll talk about it on the podcast, but not on this one because we got a lot of stuff to cover. But I will talk about it. I'll mention some things, but not right now.
Okay.
I haven't really had time to like structure like the things that I think a parent and a kid who's going to private school should know. But I heard it. And
I'm completely clueless.
Yeah, so I'll come up with like it'll be a little mini topic maybe on the next one. So, but I don't have any problem talking about it. I don't feel the need to like do something offline. I'm fine talking about school, as I have before. So, we got a good random question this week. Got a really great one.
Yeah, especially considering our Star Wars theme.
Yes, it's not just a random question. Though it's also Captain Science time.
We're gonna merge them. Caprio wants to know: have you ever seen a shooting star?
Yes, I have.
I definitely have, and the reason I know that I have for sure is because there are literally millions of shooting stars every day. Millions.
Tell us more.
So basically. What a shooting star is, and I'm going to get this right, a meteoroid.
Mm-hmm.
When you are out in space and you see a big hunk of rock, that is called a meteor. When it enters an atmosphere and falls to the surface, it is called a meteoroid. And when it is on the surface of the planet, if it actually survives that far, it is called a meteorite. I will link all of this in the info. We had to make sure we got all of our terminology right. And there are millions of things hitting our atmosphere that fall through it every single day, all over the place. Anything sizable typically falls into an ocean or somewhere uninhabited. Like 2 weeks ago, right before Explosion Wednesday, I was so excited it happened on Tuesday because Wheezy Waiter got to cover it. There was a meteoroid that landed in California, I think, or something. It was pretty sizable. It didn't hit anyone, but it definitely hit near an inhabited place, which is fairly unusual. But as long as you're not near civilization, as long as you're not near a lot of light pollution, you can like just see them. There are like 10 different places or different times during the year that we go through dusts of comets and stuff that we will actually have meteor showers. But pretty much any time you can get away from civilization for a little while and stare up at the night sky, you will see them.
Yeah. Cosmic dust, interplanetary dust, is actually little tiny bits of rock, and they're constantly traveling through our atmosphere and lighting up. Some of them very quickly, and some of them for longer periods of time. And it's beautiful. That's one of the reasons why I love vacationing in Michigan, because the place where I visit, it's like no civilization whatsoever. So you can really, really see the night sky very clearly. And that probably played a little, not an insignificant role in my little nerd upbringing of really being fascinated by space. I didn't live in a big city and just think that space was this big black void. I knew that it was full of stuff.
Right.
Cool stuff.
Yeah, last summer when we went to the beach, we had to take a ferry to get from the mainland to a fairly sizable island, but it was off the coast. And we took the ferry at nighttime on the way back. It was probably like 1 a.m. And between the island and the coast, we saw dozens of shooting stars.
Space is endlessly fascinating. Love space. We're gonna get there. We gotta do a detour through something, and then we'll talk about Star Wars. Gotta talk about Marble Hornets, because the Marble Hornets came out this week. We thought it might come out in time to do it last week, but it came out late at night.
Yeah, we saw a tweet right before we met, and I was like, oh my god, we might get to watch Marble Hornets together, but it was later that night.
And it also turned out to be not our favorite.
And we weren't very excited.
Yep.
I covered this in Molasses Hornets, which I will put in the info. I covered all the scares that happened, which were not that exciting.
No.
It was a direct sequel, which was kind of fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they didn't do what we thought they were going to do. So they didn't. The final tape was not Alex's tape. It was just more Tim, and he's got night vision on, and he's trying to avoid Alex, and he's coughing a lot. That's basically everything that happens.
That is everything that happens. This season we've praised them for trying to be more consistent, but now I think we're having a problem with them valuing, I think, the length of a video over the substance of the content.
Yeah, this was 8 minutes. This was over 8 minutes long, and not a lot happened. I think it would have been much more effective if it had been short. They could have done everything in a minute or so, and it probably would have been more interesting, and I would have liked it better. But they didn't. I think I mentioned before that this season is trying to kind of capture some of the tone and the style of the first season, but I think they're just kind of flubbing it a little bit.
I haven't been able to tell why the operator is showing up in these weird ways, because in the past it seems like we've had a way to explain why he's there a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we're being shown a reason. Is he just there to scare us, or or what? I don't know why he's superimposed into certain frames.
Yeah, I don't know. So the one thing I thought of when I was seeing this was I hate calling stuff like this theories. It's like, this theory. I mean, it's just something I thought of that is related to Marble Hornets. Is that I'm wondering if the slender sickness, if the coughing is something that the operator or someone causes to draw attention to someone. Because all I could think of in this one was, wow, he's coughing a lot, and Alex is going to find him.
Right. That was like the main suspense of this entry.
Yeah, really, the only good thing about this was the actor Tim did a pretty convincing job of coughing and being scared and trying to prevent himself, like stop himself from coughing, and it looked real, and that was good. I like that. I like that part. The rest of it was kind of so-so. I don't know. There was a lot of debate on the unfiction forums about this between people who are like, this is just filler, and everyone's like, no, this is like my favorite Marble Hornets ever. You guys are so wrong.
I think I've seen this entry is filler on just about every entry somewhere on the unfiction forums. There's always someone who is like, this didn't do anything for me.
Right. Now, like, do I think this is filler? Well, I mean, I guess all of Marble Hornets is filler, but I just found this bit of filler not as interesting as all the other filler that I've seen.
In the last entry, we got everything that we were going to learn about this particular situation, and it doesn't seem like there was anything else. We didn't learn anything else.
Yeah, we knew everything as an audience that we needed to know. Now, if you might have some lingering questions of like, well, why did Tim stay, and like, what was
what were the flashing lights? But that's not doing anything for the plot.
Right. I mean, they could have just cut this episode out entirely, and any unresolved questions from entry 56 could just be like, yeah, it's suspenseful. That was one of the cool things about the first season. Now, a lot of times they went way overboard, and you're like, I don't know what is going on, because they're just moving all over time and space with these entries, and it's hard for me to figure out what's going on, and it kind of broke down in some areas. But that's one of the cool things about Marble Hornets is, I don't know what's going on all the time.
It also, that's where all of the different interpretation comes from, because if it's not completely clear cut and A, B, C, D, you get all these people who have different opinions about what is actually going on.
Right. And I still would have not been super thrilled with this entry, but we mentioned this offline. They have let the real world kind of seep into this entry a little bit in a way that I found like really tacky. they have a title card in the middle of the entry where we're like behind Alex, and he's got a big, big pipe, and it says, "It looks like Alex has an even bigger pipe than the one he had before." And I was just like, like, really, guys, you're gonna acknowledge this whole thing that played out on forums and on Twitter about the pipe? We're really gonna do the pipe thing?
Yeah, there's no reason they had to. In the first season, things like this came up where people would question something, and what they would do is they would tweet it to Jay, or they would even ask him in they would like message the account Marble Hornets on YouTube, and if you look on the wiki, you'll see people's responses from Jay that have now become part of the canon. And I feel like if this were first season, someone would have messaged him and been like, "What did Alex hit Tim with?" And his response could have been, "It appeared to be a pipe." And that was all that they needed to do.
No, they didn't do that.
They wrote it right into the entry itself.
I think, I'm not trying to be charitable at all, but I just think that the explanation for why things have been moving so slowly is, I bet that they have some big ideas to get to, and they felt like they needed to like play this stuff out. I'm reminded a lot of season 2, where the Jessica J beginning part, which was just frankly a lot more interesting than some of this Tim stuff. By the time we got to the tapes, I was ready to see the tapes, but I just enjoy, that's this. It's very similar, the structure. It's like they feel like they've got to play out this thing, and then they can move on to their next idea. I just think that
they're trying our patience.
Yeah, they really are. If I wanted to be uncharitable, I could say they don't know what they're doing, and they're just like, this is filler because they're trying to figure out what to do next. But I think that they've pretty much indicated that they know what's going to happen this season, and they're going to base it. And this is probably going to be the last season, and they're going to wrap everything up. But I don't know. Maybe they ran out of ideas.
I hope they've got something. I have to believe they've got something.
They probably do. I mean, there's a lot more to go. I mean, these seasons are, how long are these?
20 something episodes each.
Yeah, we're only we're only a few episodes into the season.
Yeah, we'll see. There's plenty of room.
Yeah.
We're just a little bored. That's all, guys.
Sorry.
Re-engage us.
Yeah. Do something special.
Pull out a gun or something again. We liked when that happened.
That was cool. And that was in the middle of like a 15-minute entry, and I liked that entry.
Yeah.
Jay got sucked into the operator. Or maybe not. Okay. Now we can do something cool. Now we can do something that we wanted to do. Star Wars.
So, this George Lucas kid, he's going somewhere.
He's going somewhere. He was basically a kid. How old was he when he made Star? 26, 27?
Yeah.
Was he even 30? He wasn't 30 yet,
I don't think he was 30. I'll check for sure. But I mean, the cast members, they're kids. They are kids.
Yeah, Harrison Ford was like the oldest member of the cast besides Sir Alec Guinness. And he was 32.
Okay. George had just turned, he was 30. He was also 32, it looks like.
Yeah, so yeah, he was basically the same or similar age to Harrison Ford. And then, yeah, Carrie Fisher and Mark
20
Hamill.
During the filming.
Mark Hamill was 21? 22?
Yeah.
Something like that? Babies. Total babies. And Luke actually kind of came off as like, yeah, it's kind of like a baby. And he grows into his character. But at the beginning, Luke, you totally believe that he's like a teenager or, just turning, just becoming an adult. And is kind of like, not a brat, but, he's just like a kid. It's like, but I wanted to go to Tashi Station and pick up some power converters so you can play with your friends when you've got your chores done, Luke. It's like, oh, man. Whereas Carrie Fisher is, I don't know how, at her age, she pulled off Princess Leia.
She is fierce, man.
I don't know how she did it.
Standing her ground against Grand Moff Tarkin and Vader is just insane. She does not seem worried in the least the repercussions of her actions.
Yeah, and she pulls off that even in the good, awesome content of this movie, the dialogue is still kind of like, ee. She pulls off those lines like a pro.
Yeah.
You know,
she's got conviction.
Sells them. She sells them. Like another actress, a less able actress, you would have noticed more that the dialogue was kind of stilted. And she's got, you know, like what are today classic lines, but they are kind of like weak sauce. You know, Governor Tarkin, I should have expected you holding Vader's leash. I smelled your foul stench when I came on board. It's like you remember that forever, and it's not because of the line; it's how she says it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, and in the blocking of that scene, you know, her like with Vader with his arms on her, you know, Vader's like huge and he's like got his hands on her shoulders, and you got that Weasley Grand Moff Tarkin looking at her, you know, all British. So Sean's idea was to just go through the characters and talk about the characters and their arcs and their actors, and I would like to do that.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Which one would you like to start with?
Well, let's start with the beginning of the movie, which is
droids.
We see a little bit of a space battle, and we are instantly confronted with two droid characters.
This is so cool. I think I texted you last night that something like Star Wars is so cool. You get the opening, which is crazy, right? It's this space battle, and it's this giant spaceship, and you know that, and we've had that whole opening telling us like, oh, it's this big rebellion and an empire, and it's evil and heroes, and it's this big.
Yeah,
huge
you're given this epic scale to set your expectations, like
epic, right?
Yeah, big
Destroyer,
deal.
The Star Destroyer, it goes on forever, and I bet that was one of the moments when you were thinking of Spaceballs.
Yes.
Because they do one of those. The spaceship in Spaceballs takes like a minute and a half to get to the end.
And then I think it's got a bumper sticker on the back.
It does. It's like I break for or something. I don't know. This epic scale and the planet with that like blue corona, and it's beautiful, and things are exploding. And then who are we following? The two most peripheral characters possible. A little work robot
that doesn't speak,
that doesn't talk, and a protocol droid who is basically a translator.
And if he were human, he would be a hypochondriac.
Yeah, these characters are not relatable. These characters aren't. I mean, you end up liking them, but they're not really that likable.
They're not the hero character. They're not like the sympathetic whatever. They're just caught in the middle of everything.
Right. R2-D2 is a scrappy little warrior, you know, he's got heart 10 times the size of his, you know, of his enclosure.
At least once in this film, he saves the lives of several people.
Mm-hmm.
When he shuts down the garbage disposal unit thing.
You know, he is on a mission and he's going to see it through, and and he's with Luke at the end. So he becomes really likable and a really, really cool little character, even though he doesn't speak. C-3PO throughout most of this movie is frankly annoying and he's also kind of backhanded. He blames R2 for things that R2 didn't do. Why? You know, it's like when they land when the droids land on Tatooine and R2-D2 just goes one direction, C-3PO goes the other. After a while, he's like, he tricked me into going this direction. It's like, what?
And does he actually believe that? That's one of the things that I've always like when droids are presented in like Isaac Asimov or like hard sci-fi, it always seems like they have these strict rules that they obey, and this droid does not seem to follow any rules I would think of that go with a droid. It acts like a person.
I would say yeah, definitely. I would say C-3PO is like a person. He's also kind of deceptive.
We see him deceive all the stormtroopers and send them in the wrong direction when they're seeking the imposter troopers.
Mm-hmm. And then when R2-D2 is showing that little bit of the "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope" hologram, C-3PO is basically kind of covering for R2-D2. He knows that he's got some sort of mission, and
he knows that they just came from a rebellion ship.
Right. And Luke even asked him, it's like, you know of the rebellion against the Empire? And he's like, well, sort of.
We've seen a thing or two.
He's like, well, I'm just an interpreter. I don't know. And then after Luke leaves, Emperor like calls him away. C-3PO has been covering for R2-D2 the whole time, and then after Luke can't hear him anymore, he says, "Just you reconsider, showing him that thing. He's hiding from Luke when after R2-D2's left. What are you doing hiding back there? He's like, oh, I didn't.
I couldn't stop him. I tried to talk him out of it.
Right, but he was hiding. He was like cowering in the back, like, I don't want anyone to see me. I'm gonna hide behind this car thing. That's a great way to open it, because if we had just gone to Luke, we never would have known the stakes.
Mm-hmm.
And also, then these are our characters that they help tie the movie together. Why is it lucky that they got captured by the Jawas and then Luke Skywalker's family bought them? Yeah, that was kind of lucky.
Is it luck, or is it the will of the Force?
Maybe.
I've said before, I love going to predestination and fate as a theme in these kind of things, and I think with Star Wars and something like the Force, it's hard to avoid seeing the hand of fate in everything.
Right, and I mean, R2-D2 was gonna get to Ben Kenobi one way or another.
Yeah, he was in the right general area, and that's hard enough in the galaxy.
Right.
The fact that they got to Tatooine was quite a success.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and people say that the droids are there for the comic relief, which I would say maybe. I think that Han Solo is actually much more of the comic relief in Star Wars.
Yeah, definitely in this first movie.
Yeah. There's some funny bits with the droids, but it was a perfect way to get the movie going.
Yeah, it gives you that big scale, and then since they immediately get to Luke, it takes you like the whole way back. Like, you're presented with big major conflict, and then they go back to just the simple story of a farm boy growing up into a hero.
Right. I'm not exactly sure what planet we're on. Well, if there's a bright source of light at the center of the universe, you're on the planet that it's farthest from. Luke is a little sassy.
Yeah, you nailed it, that he comes off as a teenager. He comes off as someone who has really just lived this simple existence. His aunt and uncle kind of keep him on a short leash. We seem to know why. We're given a little insight into his uncle trying to protect him, but to him it just looks like, my aunt and uncle never let me have any fun.
Right. And we know there's something to do with his father, right? His dad, we eventually learn a little bit more about him from Ben Kenobi, but it's like, you kind of get the vibe that, his dad was probably like an adventurer, and Uncle Owen is,
That's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah, he's got too much of his father in him, and Owen and Emperor obviously care for Luke, and I think Owen knows that there's a rebellion against the Empire, and he knows that Luke will probably want to go off and join the rebellion. If he does, he
knows his friends have.
Yeah, and he doesn't want to lose him. He obviously lost his father. What's so wrong with being farmers? What's so wrong with not being a part of the epic stuff? And I think that Uncle Owen has a point there. Quite frankly, I mean, Luke has to become the hero, but he probably wouldn't have left if Owen and Emperor hadn't been murdered.
Right. You needed his hand to be forced, and the action that took place to make that happen was the death of them.
Right. I guess we're talking about Luke now. Luke's really interesting because he, like a teenager, he holds two conflicting thoughts in his head. He thinks he wants to leave Tatooine and go do cool stuff, but when Ben Kenobi is like, once Ben Kenobi gets the message from R2-D2, that he needs to go to Alderaan, Luke is like, I'm not going to Alderaan.
Right. He's like, you're going to accompany me, correct? And he's like, I've got moisture to harvest. I can't do that.
He says something like, everything is just so far away. And Ben points out, that's your uncle talking,
Mm-hmm.
right? So Luke, he's a typical teenager. He likes the idea of being a hero and joining the rebellion against the Empire and being idealistic. But for him at that point of his life, if he actually was forced to do it, he'd probably be like, yeah, maybe, I need to wait until my uncle hires those new hands and get some more droids to help on the farm, because that's the only life he knows.
Right.
He actually plays with a toy when C-3PO is going through the oil bath or whatever. He's got a little like spaceship toy that he's like
he's dreaming, one day I'll have time to do this.
Right, and it's always that's the way a lot of people like that think. It's well, once I'm older I'll do this, or once I've done this, once I've gone to school, or once I've blah blah blah, and then eventually you're Uncle Owen and you're not Luke's dad. That's where Luke starts. And then as we indicated, he hooks up with Ben Kenobi in that I really like the sand people scene, where he's trying to find R2-D2, but he gets ambushed, and that's where we get introduced to Ben, and Luke gets all this backstory that we get, and it's all very mysterious. It's you fought in the Clone Wars. And
I thought to myself several times while watching this and trying to experience it as if I would for the first time, that this really does feel like a mystery that is being explained to Luke, because it's so many different puzzle pieces.
Right. I mean, Luke knows that there's an empire, and he says he hates it, but I think it's more like, yeah, of course I hate it. Because
everyone out here does, basically.
Because everybody hates it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he knows about Ben. He knows about old Ben, but he doesn't really know anything about him. Like, his uncle calls him an old wizard. That's, like, his entire context for Ben.
Right. And as Luke gets filled in the story, there's a reason why Luke Skywalker is the main character. It's so we can get pulled along the story with him. We're on a desert planet with a farm boy, and we hear Ben Kenobi talk about being a Jedi Knight and about how Luke's dad was the best space pilot in the galaxy, and there were these Clone Wars or something, and there's the Force, and
the laser sword.
And a laser sword, and a freaking laser sword, which is so cool. It's like, whoa, this is amazing. Like, teenage Luke and us, it's like, this is really cool.
And if you've been watching this first half of the movie and you haven't been dazzled enough, that is the moment that Alec Guinness shows up. So if you're not already sold on this, I hope that when Sir Alec Guinness shows up, you're all of a sudden like, oh, this movie has some weight to it.
Right, and he of all of the, unsurprisingly, he brings the most gravitas of any of the actors to the movie.
Yeah, I'd say him and the guy who plays Tarkin.
Mm-hmm.
Peter Cushing. They're just phenomenal English actors.
Old English actors. They both have... I should look this up. I'll just say it, and then I'll correct myself if I'm wrong next time. I believe both of them had extensive stage careers.
Yeah, I was actually just going to say the same thing.
Extensive stage careers, and then extensive... I think Alec Guinness did much more on stage than he did on film.
And these characters are perfect, like, stage archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
He really is the old wizard.
He's an old wizard, he's mysterious, and that you just know he knows a lot more than what everybody else does. You know that his mind is 3 moves ahead of everybody. You can especially see that when they're with like Han, who is like pure id, and he's just like, let's do stuff. And Alec Guinness is like, there are alternatives to fighting.
I don't think it's much of a leap of assumption to think that the reason Obi-Wan is here is because of Luke.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he talks about how close he was to his father and all this stuff, and I think, why would this... I mean, we're filled in that Darth Vader hunted down the Jedi Knights, so of course he's in hiding, but why would he hide here except to hide with Luke? Right.
Well, I mean, I think it's impossible to talk about Luke right now without mentioning that, Ben tells him, there were these Jedi Knights, and maybe you don't know about them because we've been wiped out for a while now by the Empire, but your dad was a Jedi Knight with me, and we fought in these wars you probably heard about in history class. And
history class? Really?
Yeah.
at desert school.
Well, or whatever, in home history class. He's got to learn something, right? What, or maybe you've seen about it on a movie, right? Or you've heard about these Clone Wars, but, I was actually there, and so was your dad, and he was a great pilot. And then there were these dark times with the Empire, and one of my students, this dude named Darth Vader, he betrayed and murdered your dad.
He's a bad dude.
Oh. Yeah, he's a Jedi Knight, and I taught him, and then he killed your dad. And he killed all the Jedi.
Sorry.
And we know who Darth Vader is, and we're like, ooh, he's a bad dude. Like, he's already killed somebody on screen, and now it's like, yeah, and he killed Luke's dad? Wanna kill that guy. So Luke still has no motivation to leave the planet until he finds the skeletal remains of his aunt and uncle.
Yeah. I did something interesting. I watched the first half of this movie. I watched the theatrical release, and then I watched the second half in nice high def just because I wanted to switch. And in the first half, you get a really... I don't know if it was changed for special edition, but it's pretty explicit with their burning bodies.
I think it's still basically there. I had to watch the special edition, unfortunately. And the unfortunately there, I'm going to bring up right now. Luke decides, yes, I'm going to go with you. I want to become a Jedi Knight, like my dad. There's nothing for me here. And that's when they decide to leave, and they find Han Solo, and they blast off. And it was cool enough to go to Mos Eisley and see aliens in the cantina, and then in the special edition they've got this extended sequence at the beginning where it's like there's all these big creatures and a really obviously fake CGI speeder coming into Mos Eisley, and they added all this stuff, all this like cruft on the screen. And I was like, ugh, get rid of it. Like,
it's supposed to be a crowded spaceport.
Yeah, but it already looked cool, I don't think it was necessary to add all that stuff. Luke very quickly is kind of trying to be like a man. I think, seeing Han Solo as a foil for Luke, he's like, no, I'm a man. It's $10,000. We could buy a ship for that ourselves. And Han Solo's like, who's gonna fly
it, kid? You?
I'm not such a bad pilot myself. We don't have to listen to this stuff. And Ben is like, okay, come on, like, cool your jets.
Ben knew the kind of pilot he was looking for when he found Han.
Yeah, well, actually, he finds Chewie at the bar, and he's like, yep. I'm sure Chewie mentioned, some, like in code, probably spacer code, the sort of cargo that they're used to handling,
right.
Drugs, and I bet probably, slaves. And Han Solo's not like a really great guy.
No.
He killed someone in the bar. He's not a great guy. Regardless of whatever happened in the special edition. Han killed Greedo. I mean, he had to because Greedo was going to kill him, but...
Yeah, he showed up to fulfill a contract on his head.
Yeah, so Luke has to kind of be, I know what's going on here. And then when they see the Millennium Falcon, he's got that great line, what a piece of junk. What do you know, Luke? You've never even been to Mos Eisley.
He's got pictures up on his walls of all the ships that he'd like to fly one day.
Probably.
And apparently a Corellian freighter is not one of them.
Right. So they blast out of Mos Eisley. And Luke gets his training with Ben, and this is all payoff. It's gonna get paid off later in the movie, right? Doing his little lightsaber training, and Ben is teaching him about the Force, and you gotta reach out with your feelings, and it's just it's mystical, and you just gotta have faith.
Right.
You just gotta.
Your eyes can deceive you. Do not trust them.
Right. So he puts a little blast shield on him, and this is where Mark Hamill it's great that he was or someone like him was playing this character, because he can really bring the earnesty that you want from Luke. Han is like, whatever. It's like, good against remotes is one thing. Good against the living, that's another. And they're like getting ready to pull out a high speed and go to Alderaan, finish the trip to Alderaan. And Luke is like, I really did think I saw something. I really did feel like maybe I could see the remote there. And it's one of those it's just a great moment. You know, it's like a kid kind of learning the ropes from a seasoned master.
Not
And
bad
Ben is
for a guy who seemed completely unaware of the Force like yesterday.
exactly right. You know, he's got some aptitude.
He's got a touch for it.
Yeah, you know, and Ben probably already saw that immediately. He wouldn't have given Luke a lightsaber if he didn't think he could handle it. Uh, and you could tell that Ben's like, you've taken your first step into a larger world. You can just see that, you know, Ben is gonna try and teach this guy, you know, and help him really grow into, you know, into a Jedi Knight, into a really, you know, a great warrior, and you know, someone who rescues damsels in distress.
My favorite scene is immediately after they land on the Death Star, after they're trying to find Alderaan. This is the first time we're seeing Luke growing up. In just a few short hours, we get to see Luke execute a plan. He devises a strategy to get to the princess because she is in a detention block, and one of many great comedic moments where he grabs some cuffs and tries to put them on Chewbacca. Maybe you should put these on him. It's okay, Chewie. I think I know what he has in mind. And then they go down to the detention center, and Luke, nothing really goes the way I think that they thought it was going to. I don't think they knew what would happen when they got there.
Yeah.
They do the best with what they've got, but it's pretty messy.
I'm kind of surprised that Han decided to go along with it.
He was just blindly greedy, I guess.
Yeah, she's rich.
Han talks money.
Yeah.
He speaks that language.
I can imagine quite a lot. Yeah, so that it's actually a disaster.
But nevertheless, it is Luke's first plan.
Yes.
And it all turns out fine, eventually.
Basically, he gets to, you know, rescue the damsel in distress. Although in this movie, they've kind of turned that completely on its head, because the damsel in distress is anything but. Right.
Perfectly capable. And in fact, it seems pretty resentful that they even bothered to show up and drag her out of her quote-unquote comfy cell.
Right. Aren't you a little short to be a stormtrooper? Yeah, and she's like, I guess I got to deal with these fools, because she's a senator.
Right.
Or an ambassador or something. You know, she's an important person. And like in the Empire, she's an important person, and she's like doing stuff with the rebellion. She's like, you know, whatever, farm boy, and yeah, you're a smuggler. I was just on this spaceship that got captured by Darth Vader, and he's been torturing me. So like, whatever. Like, come on, I'm for real. You guys are jokes. That's what she's thinking. So Luke's he has to experience the tragedy of losing his mentor, you know? And that happens, and it's awful.
Yeah, and I think I may have noticed something I don't really remember picking up on before, which probably happens every time I watch Star Wars. Vader is filling in Tarkin on Obi-Wan's whereabouts because, of course, we're talking about mystical powers. Obi-Wan gives off like a signature in the Force, and Vader knows he's here. And he tells Tarkin, because Tarkin says we mustn't let him escape. He tells Tarkin, Obi-Wan's not going to escape. That's not his plan. And
I must face him.
I don't think I ever really put together until this time that Obi-Wan never meant to leave. He knew that this was a one-way trip.
I think I think you can piece that together, thinking about that, from some bits of dialogue from Obi-Wan on the Millennium Falcon. When you look at him and he says, "That's no moon, it's a space station," he looks like, oh crap.
Yeah, he's just felt the tremor in the Force of millions of people dying, and as soon as they realize that the planet is gone, he knows what it means.
Right. So they try to get out of the tractor beam, and Han Solo is like, I can't, we got to shut it down, we're going to blow the engines or something, you know, I'm not going to go down without a fight. And Obi-Wan says there are alternatives to fighting.
That is the moment that he knew what was going to happen.
Yep. Vader's on that space station, and I'm going to do whatever to get you guys out of here, but I've got to face him. And I don't know if he knows that he's an old dude now, right? he's probably thinking like, I probably can't beat Darth Vader, but I can give these guys a chance to get out of here, and and hopefully Luke will go off and become a Jedi and figure it out. But yeah, and so he sacrifices himself for the team, and Luke gets amazingly good accuracy with his gun after Obi-Wan is dead. He kills like 5 stormtroopers right in a row.
He's got this great motivation. He's like, bam, 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 headshot, headshot.
Yeah, so he's devastated. He gets, to take out some of his anger and get a little revenge by destroying the TIE fighters, but really, that's that. I mean, that's fun, and he has a good time. But the bigger payoff for him is that they get to go to the rebellion, and he's ready now. I'm a good pilot. I know something about the Force, and I'm gonna go try and save the universe.
I mean, last week we watched the Avengers, and we saw like the real motivation come from the death of a comrade, and here's the exact same situation. Like he's ready to face this gigantic threat because he's been put through the ringer emotionally.
Yes. And his training is what no one's able to hit that exhaust port. They either get blown up by the TIE fighters and Darth Vader. I think it's so cool that Darth Vader's like that. I don't think it was totally clear, but I think what happened was there were a bunch of fighters kind of like shooting at the Death Star, and then dogfighting with the TIE fighters, and then when they notice like, oh, these 3 fighters are going down, like Darth Vader gets to say, a couple of them have peeled off from the main group. We're gonna go get them. Mm-hmm. He's sort of like kind of like a Nazi SS officer, who like who goes down with the troops.
Yeah.
And, like what's his name in Raiders of the Lost Ark, the crazy guy. I can't think of the names.
I don't either.
The guy who gets, his hand all messed up because he held the medallion. And Darth Vader's just kind of cool for a bad guy. And he's just mopping up the rebels, and nobody can hit that thing. And all the ships are just getting destroyed. And they're like, Luke, you're up, man.
You said you had this, right? Something about womp rats? We don't even know what you're talking about, farm boy.
I don't even know what a womp rat is. I'm from Alderaan, man. We're just like a modern planet, although with no weapons for some reason. And that's where his training comes into play. He is relying on technology at that point, on a targeting computer. And Obi-Wan Kenobi, from the spirit world or whatever. Maybe it's not even Obi-Wan. Maybe it's
part of Luke.
It's something in Luke's mind. It's like, trust. Use your feelings. Remember the remote. Just like let go and use your emotions. And even Darth Vader's like, oh, the Force is strong with this guy.
Yeah, he can. That's we see the effects of the Force by what the characters tell us, and clearly there is some tremor around Luke that Vader can feel. Right,
and Luke uses the Force, and he's able to blow up the Death Star.
Ah, sweet.
And it explodes, and it's awesome. And he gets an award at the end. Well, he's only able to destroy the Death Star because of Han. And Han takes a completely different path. Luke goes from being kind of... Luke understands the universe a little bit better now. Han goes from being totally cynical and thinks he knows everything, and now he's... At the end, he is able to actually be a good person.
And I think there are a couple reasons. One of them is that he is a wanted man. That is a huge... He now needs to hide from people, so why not fall in with a group of people who doesn't want you dead?
Right.
So Jabba's on his case. We learned that almost immediately after we're introduced to him. And so it's a good idea to kind of lay low with this group who really values your presence.
Exactly. Han is set up as he's a bad egg. He's a smuggler.
He's made a few choices.
He has. He's had a life. He's a lot older than Princess Leia and Luke Skywalker. And I mean, his name is Han Solo. I mean, he's obvious. It's him and Chewie against the universe. And he really, you can tell that he really can't see himself as being part of a larger group.
And if Luke the farm boy is going to look at his ship and say, what a piece of junk, we know that he can't be doing that well for himself.
No, I mean, he's
making a living. He's not living well.
Right. What kind of life is that? You know,
Everyone gets boarded sometimes, sweetheart.
Right. He asked for 10,000 credits, and when Obi-Wan says, we can give you 2 now and 15 when we get to Alderaan, his eyes just lit up. 17!
Good poker face on.
17, huh? And he's like, and as the, it's, I'm in docking bay, whatever. And he's like, Chewie, get the ship ready. We got a good one this time. Like,
we got a bunch of suckers.
Right, we got some suckers, and maybe we'll be able to eat for another month. And he's just he's mean. he's mean to Luke. He thinks the Force is a hokey religion, and it's like, you guys.
Well, for good reason. He has in his lifetime never, as far as we know, experienced the Force, because we know that the Jedi Knights were wiped out. If Vader is one of the only ones who remains, how many people are actually going to see Vader in action? You probably only know him by rumor and speculation.
Right. I mean, Vader in this movie, I'm really trying hard and not
right. Yeah, I know it's hard.
Vader in this movie doesn't really seem like a really important dude, right? He's related to Obi-Wan somehow, and we know that he killed Luke's dad, and in the context of the Empire, I mean, when he walks into the conference room, all the Imperial commanders are sort of like, yeah, whatever, Darth Vader.
Yeah, totally. They don't respect his place in it. They see him as a hand of the Emperor, and he's probably just there to interfere.
Yeah, and he's kind of like a lapdog to Tarkin. I mean, when Vader is choking, I don't know the character's name. I don't know if he even has a name. He's choking the dude who was like, this station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest you use it. And he's like, Vader's like, yeah, whatever, I've got the Force. They're like, well, whatever, the Force. And then he chokes the guy from across the room. Tarkin's just like, enough of this, Vader, release him. And he's like, this is pointless bickering. He calls what Vader just did with that guy pointless bickering.
Yeah.
He's just like some dude. He's just a guy, and...
So you can move, so that you can puppet your hand around the room. Big deal.
Yeah. So, and Han explicitly says, I've traveled from one end of the galaxy to the other. I've seen a lot of crazy things, but some energy field that binds everything together? I don't think so.
It doesn't make any sense. Why?
Doesn't make sense. And he gets a little bit... I think one of the reasons why he goes with Luke is he gets a little bit of the hero bug.
Okay, yes.
I
said there was more than one reason. There's a bad reason, because he's hiding. But there is a good reason.
Right. I think, if Luke is so... Ben's going off and deactivating the tractor beam. And Luke is like, I want to go save this person. And, he was doing that thing with the remote, and there's this thing called the Force, and I don't really know about that, but, there's this rebellion in the Empire, and this kid is, like, really amped up. Am I really that, like, lame that a child is gonna go and try and rescue a princess, and I'm just gonna be like, yeah, I don't want to do that.
And then he meets the princess, and you can't help but think that his sarcasm and his mean comments aren't a little bit covering for the fact that she's slightly attractive.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of a hint at of a love triangle between our 3 main characters.
There's some flirtation going all around. None for Chewie, though.
None for Chewie.
Chewie can't get no love.
Oh, sorry, guy. Well, we
probably don't have anything to say about Chewie, so I'll just mention now. One thing, we were talking about fake characters earlier. I am totally sold on Chewbacca in a costume, being a person in the costume.
Yeah, doesn't he look great?
It never bothers me. I barely ever think about the fact that it is a person.
Yeah, I'll just mention it now since we said we'll just be kind of just talking about Star Wars. The fact that almost everything was a practical location, you can really tell. And that almost everything was a prosthetic or
models,
a practical effect. It goes a long way to make this, to sell a lot of the fantasy elements of this movie.
There's something that younger listeners might not realize is this is the first time that audiences were shown something that is now called the dirty future.
Yeah.
Which is like, if you look at a futuristic movie that's all clean and like everything looks like Portal, that's if you think about that, that's weird, because why would everything be that clean? People have been living in it just as long, in fact, longer than we have. So in Star Wars, everything looks used. The Millennium Falcon looks dirty. All of Luke's clothes are dirty. Like, it's just a future that's been lived in. There's no reason everything should be brand shiny new.
Right. Well, in the last big epic space movie that audiences in what is this, 76, 77? 77, the last big epic space movie that these people are aware of is probably 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
And that is like as far from this as you could possibly get.
It's exactly what I was talking about. Clean.
Pristine.
Everything's straight lines and beautiful. And I mean, that's also because it was Stanley Kubrick and he wanted everything to be perfect.
Right. Well, and also, and I mean, it's supposed to be that way.
Yeah.
But yeah. So no, that's absolutely true. And everything looks great. Like, going to Tunisia to film this was really smart. And I know that maybe this ruined the rest of history for us, because George Lucas was like, I never want to film on location again. This was so hard. We had sandstorms like destroying our equipment.
Can you believe that filming in a desert would be hard?
Right. You know, it's like they had an entire set just buried and they had to rebuild a whole new set. It's, you know, it's like, this is really hard. I don't want to do this anymore. And, you know, art from adversity. One of the reasons why this movie is so great is because they had to kind of rein it in and tell a tighter story, because, you know, they couldn't.
They had to overcome technical limitations.
Yeah, the technical limitations of filming on location and the technical limitations of the time. This was the first movie that used a computer to help composite a shot.
Yeah.
They invented the computer that did that. There had never been a computerized camera that could replicate the exact same movement as many times as you wanted it to.
Yeah, motion control technology.
Motion control did not exist. They invented it for this movie, which is pretty cool. So Han Solo, I think by the point that I mean, Ben Kenobi just sacrificed himself so that they could escape. Han Solo blows up a bunch of TIE fighters, and I think he's feeling pretty good. And I think he doesn't know exactly what he's going to do, but I think at that point he knows he's not just going to take the money and run, because he's taken those big, you know, they look like World War II bullet casing boxes full of money. I bet they were. And Luke says, you know, you should stay with us. You know, we could use good pilots like you. And he's just not having it, or he looks like he's not having it.
His initial want is to stay on the run, because that's the kind of person he is.
Right. And then Luke says, you know, I should have known, you know, that you would just be in this for the money, you know, and that you'd run. And Chewie says something to Han, and we don't know what it is. And he says, "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing." And it's like, you know, I have a feeling Chewie wasn't saying, "Are you sure we should just run away with all this money?" Han has probably indicated to him, like, I don't know what we're going to do, but we got to figure out a way that we can help. But I don't want to go into the battle because you know,
that's suicide, as we see. It is a lot of people just marching to their deaths. Well,
Han saw the Death Star. I mean, that's about as direct as you can get. To quote as Eddie Izzard, you know, what is it? It's a star. What does it do? It does death. It does death. That's all it does. It blows up planets. It has more firepower than half the Starfleet. So Han gets to be he gets the assist. He blows up the TIE fighter that knocks Darth Vader out of the way, and
it's the all-important assist, because it shocked Vader. Vader was unprepared, and it until this moment, we haven't really seen anything that Vader's been unprepared for. Right.
He catches Princess Leia's spaceship, and he's torturing people, and he's been taking out all the rebel fighters, like, you know, cutting through them like they're butter. You know,
he knew that they were going to escape the Death Star and tracked their ship.
I'm taking an awful risk, Vader. This better work. And Vader just sort of knew.
Yep.
But yeah, he knocks him off his A game, and Luke that's what Luke needed. Because Luke probably would be dead if not for Han Solo. Han saved his life. It's pretty cool to watch a character change like that.
Yeah.
Well, then we got Leia. there's not a whole lot to say about her because she doesn't really change in this movie.
No, in this
grow.
film she's pretty static.
Yeah, in this movie, she's not really a main character. She's not in it that much.
She's the plot device.
Yes.
She is the thing that they need to get to, and then the thing that has the knowledge that the rebellion needs to fight the Empire.
Right. So we've already described her. She's tough as nails, imperial senator or ambassador or something.
Speaks like someone who is twice her age at least.
She's a princess. And she's like a leader of the Rebel Alliance and a traitor. Take her away.
Her family is killed on Alderaan, and she, like, Luke seems pretty upset about this guy he just met dying. Leia is complete. Her face is steel about the murder of her family.
Yeah, she's consoling Luke about Ben dying in the game room of the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah.
And she's right there in the command center. She's got to be with the general who briefed the troops. She's got to be high up there in the Rebel Alliance because she's right there around that really cool table thing, circular table thing that's got the orbit of the Death Star.
Mm-hmm.
Their graphic.
Why can't that thing move a little bit faster?
The Death Star?
Yeah.
I think it's moving pretty fast. I mean, it's space.
Okay. It just seems like it takes. I mean, the third act always has to have the ticking clock, and the ticking clock is the movement of the Death Star around the planet.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems like it takes a while. Like it didn't need to take that long.
It was orbiting the planet, It was going as fast as it could. Big planet. Yavin is big.
Okay.
Yavin's a big place guy. So yeah, Carrie Fisher, they totally picked the right person, and her character is she helps make the movie, but yeah, she's definitely not. We're not amazed by the transformation she's taken. Next week we'll have a lot more to say about Leia, I think. Mm-hmm. This week she's just kind of badass for who she is. When they're in the detention center, she takes the gun from Luke, she shoots the garbage thing, and she like straps in and she's shooting down the hallway. Into the garbage chute, flyboy.
She has absolutely no restraint.
Yeah. So yeah,
she's a woman of action.
She definitely is, and she's pretty awesome. So that basically just leaves us with all of the side characters. We talked a little bit about all of them. I mean, Darth Vader. For what's going to happen, Darth Vader does not play a big role in this movie at all. Darth Vader is a henchman. Yeah. He's a really cool bad guy.
He's the face of the Empire for us for this film.
Mm-hmm. And I remember when I was a kid always thinking, so I didn't know that there were other Star Wars movies for a long time. I think I was like 7, and I'd seen Star Wars dozens of times, and I thought it was the only movie. Mm-hmm. And then someone was like, yeah, there are 2 others, and I'm like, what? So for the longest time, I just
Star Wars 2 and Star Wars 3.
Right. For the longest time, I just thought this was a little self-contained movie, and I always kind of thought that Darth Vader was like a more powerful stormtrooper because he kind of dressed with, they had like armor, and he was always with the stormtroopers. And I just kind of
flies
thought,
a ship that other Empire soldiers fly.
Yeah, I thought he was just kind of like, he's kind of he leads the elite troops in the Empire, or not even in the Empire, like just with the people that we see right here. I always thought that Governor Tarkin was the one in charge because he is the one in charge.
He is the commander of the space station. Yeah.
Yeah, he's in charge, and he's like making decisions and telling Vader to do this, and he had to be persuaded by Darth Vader to let them go. So yeah, Darth Vader is a really cool bad guy, and I bet that George Lucas was really happy that he didn't kill him at the end.
I bet you're right. Yeah, the tastiest bit of info that we have on him is the fact that he killed Luke's father.
Right. He betrayed and murdered Luke's father, and he was taught by Obi-Wan Kenobi. And something about Obi-Wan Kenobi, and oh boy, Alec Guinness was just so great. Tarkin seems to know about Obi-Wan.
I think they are interesting to compare and contrast against each other, Tarkin and Kenobi.
Obi-Wan?
They're 2 men who enter this battle and don't leave it.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's
And
really true.
they both, I wouldn't call, I don't know if I'd call Obi-Wan stubborn, but I mean, he made up his mind about what he was doing when he went in there. And
Yeah.
Tarkin made a decision too. Like, that's why he ended up going down with the ship.
Yeah, they tell him like we've analyzed their attack plan, and there's a if they can pull this off, there's a real chance that something bad could happen. We've got a ship ready. Do you want to go? And he's like, leave in our moment of triumph?
No.
No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to blow up the rebellion, and I'm going to be famous.
I'm going to end this stupid diversion once and for all.
Right. Obi-Wan, he knew what he was getting into. He definitely knew what he was getting into. So, his battle with Darth Vader, his little sword fight with Darth Vader. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we've heard about. We know that Vader was his student. He killed Luke's father. We know that he's a bad guy, and that's kind of like a tough little lightsaber fight there. Even though it's not,
it's not Rob Roy.
Lightsaber fight. No, it's two old guys. One of them is, we don't know why Darth Vader is in this getup, but he doesn't seem like a well man.
No.
And they're just kind of.
The conversation almost seems more important than the fight.
It is. They haven't seen each other in decades. Obi-Wan has to be just, this has got to be one of his biggest failures, right? He taught the guy who ended up killing all of the Jedi. He killed his best friend, Luke's dad, and now they have to fight. And I'm sure both of them, they knew that only one of them was going to walk out of that fight. Like, Vader probably had some confidence, like, I think I can take that guy down. I killed a lot of Jedi. And I think Obi-Wan probably thought, I don't know, Vader's killed a lot of Jedi. I don't know if I can beat him, maybe. And then he sacrifices himself. So,
because he knows what the power of his sacrifice will be.
Yeah.
He knows that is more important.
Yeah. When I really hate how literal a lot of Star Wars fans take some of the lines in these movies. When Obi-Wan says, if you kill me, I'll become more powerful than you can imagine.
He's going to turn into Jean Grey and the Phoenix.
Right. Somehow, in the fan community, that's like, yes, he's going to become this, this spirit with all these powers.
Spaceman.
Space Jesus. And I think I think the more obvious thing that he meant was, if you kill me, Luke is going to come back and blow this ship up. He's going to blow this.
I will become a martyr.
Yeah. That's what
I am a symbol.
Yes. For the rebellion, right? I'm sure that we didn't see it, but I'm sure that Leia and everyone else seems to know about Obi-Wan. You were a great general. You fought with my father in the Clone Wars, and I'm sure when they went down to the Rebel base, it's like, they say, we rescued Princess Leia, but in the process, Darth Vader killed Obi-Wan Kenobi, and everyone is like, what? Obi-Wan Kenobi was alive this whole time, and Darth Vader killed him? We gotta take this guy out.
That's the last straw. That big ball of death ray is going up in flames.
Yeah, we're gonna take you down. It's like they blew up Alderaan, they killed Obi-Wan Kenobi, they tortured Princess Leia. We're taking them down, and they do, and it's a great payoff. Great payoff.
I think it's very obvious that this film was designed to stand on its own in case it didn't go anywhere, and I think it could.
I think it easily does. By the end, it's just like, yeah, that's great. We won. That's what makes Empire such a great sequel, because we won, right? Right. Didn't we? Isn't it done now? Well, we'll see next week. So everybody's homework next week is to watch Empire Strikes Back. Probably the greatest movie ever made.
Just throwing it out there.
Just throwing that out there. And we're going to talk about how not only did they not win, but they're like on the run, and it's not looking good for
This is the beginning of a bad time.
Yeah, so...
it's basically like they cut off the hand of the Empire, and the rest of the body of the Empire is really upset about that.
Right. The name of the movie is The Empire Strikes Back. Okay, you blew up our Death Star. We're going to hunt you down and kill every last one of you.
You thought we were mad before.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. I really do like Return of the Jedi, the prequels. Everyone probably knows how I feel. I almost, in some ways, wish that there wasn't even Return of the Jedi and it just ended with Empire.
Yeah.
You wouldn't get the pay. I mean, it's too sad.
Right.
But
It's not an ending by any means.
No. But it is a great movie. And we're gonna watch it. We're gonna watch it and talk about it next week, and hopefully not explode with the gushing on Empire. The dialogue is even better in Empire. I mean, the one thing that you could fault Star Wars with is that the dialogue wasn't super great.
Yeah, I actually have a list of things that I don't feel right bringing up until we've seen Empire, and that's one of them.
Yeah, there's some stuff. The editing and the pacing of the trench sequence. The trench sequence is my favorite, specifically when Luke has to go down. I think that may rival anything in Empire, but the Empire the movie is just it's amazing, and I love it. All right, well, we're not quite done. We got one last thing for everybody, right, Shawn?
Yeah, our fans may know that the way that we got started in this entire debacle was Carter and I played Portal 2 co-op together for my gaming channel all those months and months ago. And in case you don't know, when you play Portal 2, there is a new free DLC called Perpetual Testing Initiative, and it includes a level editor. So what we're interested in doing, if our community wants to rise to the challenge, is you can create co-op levels and then share them on the Steam Workshop. And what we would like to do is, if we can get enough good co-op levels together, we will go play them for y'all. You can try and stump us.
Which you probably will.
Which probably won't be very hard.
If you haven't seen... So, I mean, I'm just going to put this out there. If a laser disc is involved in your maps, I will likely fizzle it before I realize what's going on.
We overcame a lot of handicaps our first go around.
We grew a lot like Han and Luke in Star Wars. I looked up our very first. Oh, this isn't our very first. Sorry. I'm looking up our very first Portal on SVM Gaming because I think it's very close to a year ago, Shawn.
I would imagine you're right. It's probably more than a year ago.
Episode 1 was posted. Did you repost them? You never took them down or anything?
I don't think so.
Reorder them? So our very first episode of Portal 2 was May 30th, 2011.
Okay, yeah.
So very nearly a year ago we started.
That interesting. So basically, all you have to do to get them to us is you can just leave your Steam name, and it looks like I can look up people's accounts. So all you have to do is leave a comment or email me. The email address is always in the info, chancesarelimited@gmail.com. You can send me the name of your account and the name of any maps you want us to look at, and I will download them and check them out.
Sounds good.
And then we'll get stumped and get frustrated and then high five.